Legends that endure in the future were events that took place in the distant past. This is a line from chapter 99 of One Piece, the very same chapter where we had Luffy's failed execution in Loguetown, in which he was saved by a lightning bolt. It's a very interesting line because it doesn't come from a specific character, but rather from the narrator. The thing with using normal dialogue, especially in One Piece, is that people's perceptions within this story are skewed. There is an abundance of misinformation and rumors spread around the One Piece world, so lines like this, where it is outright stated in a fancy box from the narrator, they really hold a lot of weight to me. And this line is deeply connected to the history and logistics of the One Piece world. Yes man, I said logistics. I believe the mythical Zoans were creatures that actually existed during and or before the Void Century. Among these mythical Zoans, I believe there are 4 god fruits: the god of the sun, the god of the rain, the god of the forest, and the god of the earth. Before you think I'm crazy, this page in the Nolan flashback shows us the Shandians praying to these 4 gods. This may be all we have of them in the story so far, but frankly it is more than enough. We had nothing more than a few mentions of the sun god before Wano, all of which were also in Skypiea, the very arc these 3 other gods were introduced. In this video, I will be discussing who I think are the most valid candidates for these 4 devil fruits of the gods. That dichotomy is really interesting, by the way. These are devil fruits that grant you the power of a god. It's weird how these things can coexist through this power system, and I am so unbelievably excited for that massive exposition dump we will one day get through Vegapunk. But with the bits and bobs we already have, I can confidently say there will be 4 mythical Zoan god fruits, including the Nika fruit we just found out about. Zoan fruits are said to have a will of their own. This sets them apart from other devil fruits and makes sense considering Zoan fruits grant the user the ability to transform into an animal, which are conscious beings with wills of their own. Zoan fruits are split into regular types, ancient types, and mythical types. If you look at the quote I mentioned at the start of the video, it kind of destroys the concept of myths in the One Piece world, or it adds context to all the myths. Legends or myths are things that actually happened in the past in the One Piece world. So these mythical creatures like Kaido's Seiryu, or Yamato's wolf, or Marco's phoenix, it seems they might not just be mythical creatures and actually existed once upon a time. I guess that would make them ancient, but they are special and outside of the ordinary, so it makes sense for them to have evolved into legends and myths over time. I've established in countless videos why Joy Boy and the sun god Nika are the same person. I feel like most people can tell that for themselves, so I don't think I need to explain that. But in terms of timeline, Joy Boy existed 800 years ago during the Void Century. Since 1044, the big devil fruit revelation, I have been asking myself, is Joy Boy a devil fruit user, or was he the actual sun god Nika that the fruit was merely imitating in a way? Or we don't understand that part. Is it even imitating the fruit? Devil fruits are such an ambiguous mechanic. We don't know the extent of a Zoan fruit's will, but even with all these holes and question marks, I think that line from chapter 99 is incredibly important. Because when you think about that line, it comes at the start of the chapter and it's kind of disconnected from everything else that's going on. Why is there speak of legends by the narrator? There are a few reasonable suggestions. For example, it's the chapter of Luffy's fake execution. Maybe the legend comment is in reference to how he will smile and how he will never be forgotten because of how he smiled on his deathbed, just like Goldie Roger, and eventually Luffy's memory would be immortalized as a legend. All the talk of legends or myths, whatever you want to call them, are actually in direct reference to the thunderbolt that saved Luffy's life. What if this was the first time we ever saw a mythical Zoan fruit in action? The storm that followed, the inexplicable weather conditions of Loguetown on that fateful day. There have been theories about Monkey D. Dragon's devil fruit for years. Is it a wind Logia, a storm Paramecia? Or perhaps Dragon is the user of the mythical Zoan fruit, Rain God. I find it incredibly eerie that chapter 99 opens up with that talk of legend, and then we get this, which is very likely to be a legendary or mythical type Zoan fruit in action. What do you guys feel? I feel like a lot of people are going to advocate for Imu as the rain god because their name is Umi backwards, which directly translates to the sea, and it would be fitting for the final obstacle in the series and the ruler of the world government to have an ability that can essentially wash any devil fruit user, pun intended. But I actually think Imu is a much better candidate for the next god fruit we will be talking about, the earth god. I actually got this specific idea from a friend of mine, my boy Juan, or JP Theory. Make sure you guys check out his channel because he has some fantastic content and deserves a lot more recognition. Go over to his channel, subscribe, leave a comment on one of his videos saying Fiji sent you, because this idea would not be possible without him. And it's a really fucking cool idea. The Red Line is this massive continent that the entire world revolves around. Meridra, the home of the celestial dragons, lies atop this red line. It separates the seas into 4 blues, and it is said to be 10 meters deep from ocean level to the Fishman Island. It is considered indestructible. The only person who managed to attack Meridra was Fisher Tiger, and he had to climb the red line using his bare hands, a feat that was interestingly mirrored by Luffy in the Drum Island arc. Not only that, but Luffy is the sun god and Fisher Tiger was the captain of the Sun Pirates. Fisher Tiger freed the slaves, and we know that the sun god Nika was loved by slaves for being their liberator. All of these parallels and connections between Luffy and Fisher Tiger are incredibly important, and I plan to discuss this in a future video, but how does this all tie into Imu? Well, if you look at the Red Line and One Piece's geographical structure, maybe some people won't agree with this, but to me, it almost feels artificial. It caters to the world government perfectly. The home of the Celestial Dragons lies atop the Red Line, and the government have technology to venture through the Calm Belt, which separates the world. They're the only people with that technology. This artificial red line or man-made red line stuff, this isn't a new idea. Tekking made a fantastic video on this a few years ago, and there are countless reasons as to why this works. I think Imu created the red line using their devil fruit power, the mythical Zoan type Earth God. We know that in One Piece, the sea, the Umi, represents freedom, and Imu is the opposite of the sea, the biggest representation of oppression in the story. They are the ruler of the world government. They own practically the entire planet, and everybody in the world, with a few exceptions, is under the rule and subjugation of Imu and the world government they command. The heavenly tribute that nations must pay to the world government shows you that oppression clearly. They are massive payments, and if a country fails to pay it, they cannot receive the aid of the world government and are ultimately left to be ransacked and destroyed by pirates. And not the good kind of pirates, but the absolute worst. The world nobles sit in their position of power solely for having the blood of the world's creators. If we take this literally, the world could have been recreated by the previous Earth God 800 years ago. Or if this Imu is alive for 800 years and has been there since the Void Century, it could have just been that Imu who created the Red Line and recreated the world following the end of the Void Century. Imu is already a complete antithesis of Luffy, who stands for freedom, which is what makes the Earth God fruit such a perfect fit. The Pirate King, the ruler of the sea, which represents freedom, versus Imu, the ruler of the lands, who strips away the freedom of people and enforces their oppressive laws. I really love these ideas about the Rain God and the Earth God for Dragon and Imu respectively, and I feel like adding more of these gods into the story will improve my thoughts on Luffy being the Sun God a lot more, because I don't want Luffy to feel too special. Don't get me wrong, Luffy is definitely very special, and of the 4 gods, the Sun God has by far been given the most focus and is the most important one. But if you include these new gods into the story and more of these mythical Zoan fruits and add to the lore, it could be fantastic for this series and make things work a lot smoother. So we've established the Sun God as Luffy, the Rain God as Dragon, and the Earth God as Imu. Who do we think is the 4th and final Forest God? My mind immediately goes to Greenville Admiral Rakugu, a character who's kept silhouetted for his only scene and is only mentioned by name outside of that. This is a character I feel like fans have subconsciously put a lot of stock into just based on how long we've been waiting to finally see him and his design. The forest god fruit could work because of the green in his name and the fact he hasn't eaten for 3 years being justified as some kind of photosynthesis, but it isn't too compelling of an idea. I don't see why a character like Greenville would have such an important fruit. Luffy, Dragon, and Emu, 3 incredibly significant characters, so giving them these god fruits makes sense, but Greenville, what role does he serve in this narrative? At this point we don't know, so saying Greenville has this mythical god fruit is kinda creditless at this point, but we can't completely write it off because this is One Piece at the end of the day. The next candidate for this fruit is Blackbeard. I've already made a video discussing why I think Blackbeard has a 3rd devil fruit and why that fruit is a mythical Zoan, and in that video I don't make any solid suggestions on what that fruit could actually be, but I think this makes perfect sense. The forest god fruit for Blackbeard, the 1st devil fruit he ever consumed. I know it sounds absolutely batshit crazy, but hear me out. The forest is symbolically connected to life, and a fruit like this could justify some big mystery surrounding Blackbeard. Firstly, his multiple devil fruit consumption. How does he have the Yami Yami and the Gura Gura when it is stated in the story that more than one devil fruit, like consuming more than one devil fruit, would kill any person? Well, a forest god fruit could give him the ability to tamper with life force itself or have power over life itself, and that could explain this really well. Another thing is how he actually got the Gura Gura. He covered Whitebeard's corpse with some cloak and did some creepy shit and popped out with earthquake powers. If he has a forest god fruit that gives him some sort of power over life, it could explain exactly what happened here. Some people think he just had the perfect match, as in like the fruit that the Gura Gura would grow into, and then he just waited under the cloak for it to morph into it, then ate it. But I don't think that is going to be the case. I feel like there's obviously a lot more going on, and whatever happened under that cloak with Blackbeard and Whitebeard, that is deeply connected to how Blackbeard is capable of eating multiple fruits. I don't think he can just eat a 2nd devil fruit, but I feel like there's some kind of hack or some kind of trick to it that only he knows or only he is capable of doing because of his devil fruit. Blackbeard's sleep problems can also be explained through this because plants and other multicellular organisms don't need sleep to function. I truly do think the forest god could be Blackbeard, but there is one more potential candidate we gotta talk about. Loki, the Prince of the Giants. The only reason I say this is because of the abundance of Norse mythology surrounding Elbaf, and honestly, I think we'll be getting a ton of answers regarding devil fruits when we finally get there because of the great tree in Norse mythology, the Yggdrasil. This tree represented the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. It was considered the world tree, and it was said that the death of the Yggdrasil would mean the death of the whole world of gods. It's pretty much confirmed we'll see a tree inspired from the Yggdrasil in One Piece when we finally get to Elbaf, and it would be fitting for the Prince of Elbaf to have the forest god fruit. There are some really cool ideas about Yggdrasil being like a potential devil fruit tree in the world of One Piece, being the root of all these powers and being connected to the Void Century somehow, and once it's destroyed, devil fruits will no longer exist or some shit. It's cool stuff, but that's a topic for an entirely different video. I expect these 3 other gods, the Rain God, Earth God, and Forest God, to have names of their own. Hopefully their names are not Jika and Seeker, because if we get that before finding out who the fruit users are, people might actually go fucking insane. But yeah, and beyond that, I don't think we should look at their names too literally and think their powers are going to be directly in correlation with their names. Like Rain God, Forest God, Earth God doesn't mean they have to have rain powers, earth powers, forest powers. I mean, it's probably going to be related to that in some way, shape or form, 100%, but it's probably not going to be exactly that because we have the sun god Nika who, you know, doesn't have sun powers, you know? He's a rubber dude, he's a rubber nigga. Alright, but yeah guys, let me know what you guys think about the video, the theory. I think this is one of my best ones yet, and I had an absolute blast making this video. Thank you guys for watching. Peace. One piece.